You can be seated. Hello and welcome to the oral of Drew Wiggins. We're excited to hear what he has to say today for us. My name is Ben Snell, and joining me on the panel are Mr. Tim Bowden and Mrs. Stacy Jackson. Drew was my senior assistant this year in chemistry and a little bit in geometry. And I'll pray for us and let him get started. Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the young man that you've made Drew to be. We pray that you would give him calm nerves today and a clear heart to express things that he's been learning this year and that he wants to share with us. We pray that we would take something from his speech today and his responses to the answers and apply them to our lives. And we just pray that you would let Drew be a blessing to us in this moment. In your name we pray. Amen.
Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, Rosa Parks, Isaac Newton, Dr. Seuss. In what ways are each of these people the same? They were leaders in their field, each a quintessence of influence, fighting against the norm to stand up for what is right. What if I told you each of these individuals is also an introvert? Abraham Lincoln was one of the greatest orators of his time. Albert Einstein, in addition to math, was greatly involved in political movements with an outgoing nature. Rosa Parks spoke out for civil rights. Isaac Newton was always debating. Dr. Seuss was always teaching on the importance of reading and the joy it brings. With so many introverts found in leadership throughout history, why is it the leadership is often thought of as something only for the charismatic and extroverted among us? Introverts make extraordinary leaders in all walks of life. We must begin by defining some terms. Introversion is defined by Merriam-Webster as a typically reserved or quiet person who tends to be introspective and enjoys spending time alone. Introverts are people that tend to focus more on ideas than on people. Meanwhile, an extrovert is defined as someone who is typically gregarious and unreserved person who enjoys and seeks out social interaction. Because of these definitions, introverts are often perceived as quiet people, while extroverts are viewed as loud, attention-seeking people. The main difference between these two types of people is where they get their energy from. Introverts can exert themselves at a party or around friends, but when they get home, will need time to recharge alone. Extroverts, on the other hand, find energy from activities such as parties. Being around people fuels them, and they recharge by being around people. Based on a study done by the Myers-Briggs Company, around 57% of people in the world are introverts. We need both types of people in our world, for as 1 Corinthians 12:18-20 says, "But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body." Paul is speaking to the church in Corinth about how each person has been given specific gifts and talents to benefit the kingdom. In the same way, we cannot all be introverted or extroverted because we have all been created in such a way to benefit the entire body. Introverts need extroverts, and extroverts need introverts. Both are capable of being great leaders, but each in their own way. Introverts fill a quieter role, and extroverts lead in a more charismatic fashion. So what makes a leader, and how do introverts and extroverts lead differently? So first we must define leadership. Leadership is the ability to inspire and influence others toward a common vision through one's words and actions. Everywhere we look, there are leaders around us. Leaders come in many different forms, from being a charismatic figure, giving public speeches and commands, to the one behind the scenes who quietly guides others. With so many forms of leadership, how can we determine what good leadership looks like? In preparation for my oral, I interviewed Mr. Herman Eben, co-founder of the Great Solutions Group, which focuses on building superior cultures with exceptional leaders. He told me that a good leader is someone that is committed to influence others to get there. This idea comes from the book Servant Leadership by Dave Kuhnert, which is read in rhetoric at MCA. He describes the here-there path where everyone has a place they are and somewhere they are trying to reach. Between here and there will be obstacles along the way. Kuhnert describes this using the analogy where here is someone that's thirsty for water, there is the desire for water, for the thirst to be quenched, and the path is the gap in between to seek water. Leading comes in many forms, but each has the common goal of helping people on the path to there. While they did not all initially have followers, all great leaders will eventually have followers. Mr. Eben said that if we are seeking to improve our leadership, there are a few steps to follow. Speaking from his book, Servants Leading Servants, he said there are 3 daily priorities, that each day you set clear expectations, clear consequences, and have self-governance. The next step is to use the 2 remarkable skills, listening and asking questions. Each of these is part of the one timeless process that is leadership. Leaders must first ensure they understand what they are doing themselves through expectations, consequences, and self-governance before they can help other people. Listening and asking questions is a key part of leadership. This is an area where introverts have an edge over extroverts, as they tend to think more about ideas and gain more from these two skills. The timeless process is having a plan set in place through the here-there path, acting on the plan and adjusting as necessary, and following through to reach the end goal. According to a study done by researchers from Wharton, Harvard Business School, and UNC Chapel Hill's Business School, introverted leaders bring about 28% higher productivity to their teams than extroverts. During my time at MCA, I've had many opportunities to lead. I've served as RT leader, assistant chess coach, both with the upper school and the grammar school, and cross-country team captain. In cross-country, the seniors typically take on a leadership role, but during my junior year, there were no seniors, so I was able to lead for 2 years. Heading into this year, we had a coaching change, and I was able to help our new coach leading warm-ups, course walkthroughs, and courses he had not been to. As an assistant chess coach, I came alongside the main chess coach and was able to help by splitting the grammar kids into different teams so the team would be stronger overall. The game of chess is a very individual game that requires strategy and lots of planning during the game. I enjoy chess because I tend to analyze every situation I'm in, and that transfers seamlessly into chess. At the upper level, I help by teaching some basic tactics and helping to gain confidence throughout the game of chess. We seem to live in a world that values extroverts, so introverts must learn how to live in this world. For my oral, I read Quiet by Susan Cain, and she described how the world has shifted toward a more extroverted ideal through the American Industrial Revolution. More people began to live in the city and found themselves working with strangers instead of their neighbors, in contrast with when they were mostly living in the country, farming. This shift favors those that are outgoing and bold, but sometimes leadership appears in different ways. In 7th grade at MCA, we read The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. At the beginning of the book, when Gandalf approaches Bilbo for the first time to partake in a journey with the leadership roles, Bilbo replies, "We are plain, quiet folk and have no use for our adventures, nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things." As a hobbit, Bilbo has never known anything other than his hobbit hole, so the thought of departing on an unknown adventure is a terrifying thought for him to undertake. Bilbo does not immediately become the leader of the group when he joins Gandalf and the dwarves on the quest, but remains in the background, becoming more comfortable and using his cleverness to benefit the group. As the journey progresses, he is seen by the dwarves as more of a leader than they first thought him to be. Through this example, we're reminded that people are not always what they appear to be upon initial encounters, and we must look for opportunities to bring out the best in everyone around us. Leadership does not have to be flashy or charismatic. Sometimes we step out of our comfort zone as introverts to do things that are not something we would pick to do. A few years ago, my friends convinced me to serve at T-Bar Day Camp. Each week, you oversee a cabin of kids and lead them to each activity, lead trail guide, and ensure that everyone is having fun. It requires constant energy from the coaches to keep them engaged throughout the day. As an introvert, it is draining to give 110% all the time. It is not something I would have ever thought of doing, but through them talking about it, I felt called to step out of my comfort zone and give it a try. Being loud is not anywhere near my comfort zone, but through coaching at camp, it has allowed me to have a childlike faith and experience things how the kids are experiencing it. Sometimes the Lord works in unexpected ways. For as Proverbs 16:9 says, "In their hearts human plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." We must trust in Him to guide our paths, even if it is out of our comfort zone. We can trust that He has a greater plan, and I'll be doing it again this summer for my 3rd year. While leadership can be viewed as charismatic, it is often seen through a person's influence. During my interview, we discussed how introverts lead extroverts and vice versa. Mr. Eben said that introverts and extroverts cannot make themselves the other, but they can stretch themselves to a point to meet the other person where they are. And that by ensuring you have a there, you are influencing someone towards. The person will be leading by remembering the timeless process. Now, these stark definitions may lead to assumptions that extroverts make better leaders due to their outgoing nature. while introverts are incapable of leading due to their quieter demeanor. Living in such a loud world, it seems that a leader would have to be outspoken and flashy to be noticed. The extroverts are the only possible leaders because they are comfortable putting themselves out, while an introvert is not. The world we live in and the way we see leadership is the loud, outspoken figure in front of everyone, which goes against the common vision of an introvert. A leader is someone that is able and comfortable conveying their ideas in front of groups of people. Because of this, introverts would not be able to be the extraordinary leaders because of their social battery that drains more quickly in large groups. These statements make it appear that extroverts would make for a better leader than an introvert. However, introverts' ability to focus on ideas and use the skills of listening and asking questions gives an edge over the extrovert who connects more with the person, not necessarily the thoughts and ideas they bring to the table. In conclusion, introverts make for extraordinary leaders. Each person has their own way of leading. Some lead from the front, while others lead from behind the scenes. But each person is well equipped to lead if they remember the one timeless process. We need each other, and the world is a much better place when we realize our own strengths and weaknesses to better utilize them for the benefit of ourselves and others. By gaining a better understanding of the people around us, we can work together for the benefit of everyone. Introverts typically lead in a quieter, more background role, while extroverts typically take a more outspoken approach to leadership. Leadership is not defined by a specific group of people. We are all capable of developing leadership. As 1 Peter 4:10 says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Listening and asking questions are some of the greatest strengths that introverts have, and it is also important in leadership. Introverts do not want to be out in front of people. They will build others up. As a leader, humility is crucial to serve those around us. We can begin to shift away from the idea that leaders must be outgoing and extroverted. Consider how many of our great leaders in our nation are introverts. Imagine the difference that would begin to occur if introverts were taken more seriously. Thank you.
Congratulations, Drew. You're done with the speech.
Thanks.
What are your future plans for
I'll
next
be
year?
attending Texas Tech to study petroleum engineering.
Okay, congratulations. Good job getting the word quintessence in there. I'll give you those bonus points later. So I was wondering if you have ever taken a quiz that tells you, if you're an introvert or extrovert. If you've ever taken one of those.
I have not.
What do you think it would say if you did?
Definitely introvert.
Okay.
No question.
No question. Okay. While you were speaking, I thought of a few, kind of different questions. One is, if you were stranded on a desert island with only introverts, what do you think the pros and cons of that situation might be?
They'd be able to entertain themselves longer, I think, because you'd be content to go sit in a corner somewhere quiet. But maybe somebody would have to take charge eventually to try to get off the island.
Okay, and that might be a little bit hard for an introvert to have to step into that role. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. It's just curious. So what led you to make this the topic of your thesis? Has this been something you've been thinking about for a while, or did you think about it, during the course of this year?
It mostly came together this year, probably.
What led you to making this the topic?
All the opportunities that I've had as an introvert, and I feel I lead pretty good.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that everybody needs to be a leader, or is it okay to not be a leader? What do you think?
I think everyone is a leader, at least leading themselves. Okay.
Can you expound on that a little bit more as far as needing to lead others? Do you think everybody needs to lead others as well, or just themselves? Or maybe another way to ask that question would be, does God call us to lead others?
I think he does. That we're all to lead him towards him.
Okay, yeah, that's a good answer. So why do you think it's so important for introverts to step up as leaders? You said maybe that extroverts have a natural advantage because they're more gregarious and outgoing, and so maybe it comes a little bit more natural for them. But why do you see such value in introverts becoming leaders of other people?
They can take a different approach, and them thinking more about ideas helps them to connect with people in maybe deeper ways than an extrovert would on a base level.
Okay, so maybe an introvert is maybe sitting off more to the side and gets to observe and calculate and think about, how these big ideas might affect the group of people. So, okay, good. Do you think that introverts and extroverts can partner in leadership of large groups of people? Is that possible, or does it just have to be, kind of one individual that's the introvert?
I think they complement each other through leadership.
Okay. Have you seen any examples of that in your own life here at MCA with some of those leadership opportunities that you've had? Have you ever partnered with extroverts in leadership roles?
I think so. I mean, probably half of our grade is extroverted.
At least.
At least.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So I'm interested in the example that you brought out from The Hobbit. That's one of my favorite books. And you talked about how Bilbo started on his journey, and then throughout the journey he was revealed to be a leader, through the other dwarves and their journeys and their trials and things like that. Do you think that leadership that Bilbo later reveals in himself, do you think that's something that was always in him and was just revealed at a later point in time, or was it something that he didn't have at the beginning that he grew into along the way?
I think he always had it and just kind of grew more comfortable with the people around him.
Okay. Interesting. I'll ask then, how did leadership change Bilbo along the journey? Did it change him in any way? If he already had it, did he change in any way? Taking you back a long time to 7th grade, I know.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I was just asking if you think that Bilbo changed in any way along his journey as a leader or as a person.
I think the change was just becoming more comfortable with the people around you and gaining a greater confidence going into it.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So I'll bring it back to you with day camp. What was the biggest way that you saw yourself grow as a leader, specifically through day camp and those experiences?
Being forced to be in charge of 9 to 13 kids on my own, sometimes without a co.
That sounds crazy. How old was the age group that you coached at day camp?
I kind of did all over, but I think I had 7-year-olds without a co when we...
Oh, man. So do you think, it sounds like from the way you've described Bilbo's leadership and then your experiences at day camp, that it seems that part of growing into that leadership role is just literally being forced into it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would.
Okay. If we're in charge of growing ourselves to be more like Christ and being sanctified in that process of obedience, how does that square with being, quote unquote, being forced into those positions of leadership? That's kind of a strong way to say it, but how does obedience square with being thrust into those leadership roles?
I feel like sometimes you're just you're called to do it. And so through obedience, you're just following and then stepping into that leadership role.
Okay, that's good. I'll change gears for my last couple questions before I pass the mic. Who do you think makes better followers, introverts or extroverts?
I think both can follow pretty equally.
Okay. Are there any, what makes a good follower? If you had to list a few things that would make a good follower, what could those be?
Obedient, trusting, not self-centered.
Okay, yeah, I think those are good. Are there any of those traits that also make good leaders?
I think the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a unique relationship between, as we follow, we also are being crafted into leaders of others. There's actually, I didn't count, but there's been a number of senior theses this week that have been about leadership. I could think of
3 on Monday.
3 on Monday. Yeah, it's a lot. I feel like this ground has been tread in different ways by the rest of your class, but something that stood out to me was, as you guys are students, who are following the lead of your tutor in the classroom. You guys are also being put into leadership positions with RT groups. Can you talk to me about your RT group experience this year and last year as a leader and things you've learned about leadership as an RT leader?
It was fun. Both years had a really great group, and it was just fun hanging out with people and being able to help lead conversations and get to know the younger students.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Was there any specific ways that you felt stretched or that you grew through that process?
I feel like being forced to make those relationships and help make sure everyone's there. Yeah.
Okay, there's that word again, forced. But on the contrary, I think that you're not forced necessarily. You are placed in that position where you can be obedient to make those relationships. And so I think on one hand, I admire that you think you don't have an option. I just need to be obedient. But I think you are doing yourself, a disservice to say that, because you really are stepping into obedience to make those happen. So it was fun to watch you do that this year, and I was glad to be partnered up with you in our T groups. I'll go ahead and pass the mic to Mr. Bowden.
I'm very proud of you. Watching you prepare for this just this morning took me back to my high school time. Speech class was my lowest grade by far of any of my high school classes, because I actually skipped my first 2 speeches because I didn't want to give them. So I'm very proud of you for stepping up and doing that. Just really proud of you for doing that. I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
So I want to start with just defining the term leader. I kind of zoned out while you were talking. You didn't ask that question, did you? Okay, good. I was thinking, man, I'm really proud of how he's doing right now. So what would you say would be the essential attributes of a leader?
They trust the people around them, and I guess they're observant to the people around them and their needs, and how to think about how to fit what each person needs.
Yeah, you mentioned listening and asking questions as a big part of being a leader, and also as kind of a more natural tendency of an introvert, which I want to ask you a question about that. So, that kind of encompasses like maybe an aspect of humility, right? As far as being able to listen and ask questions, having that aspect. So that's kind of the servant part of leadership. What is another essential part of leadership besides just being about the people that you're leading?
Being able to make a decision to help guide in the proper direction.
Yeah. So vision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Yeah. Without vision, the people perish, right? Or at least they go around in circles, right? So yeah, I think that's the way I would say it too, is maybe listening and asking questions, or the servant side of it, and then the leadership side of it is casting the vision, and kind of like you said, the here, there path is an important part of it. You also, so going to the listening and asking questions part, you said that is a more inherent skill for introverts, or more natural skill for introverts. And you said that because typically they're more concerned with ideas rather than people. I think that's what you said. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And for me, I have a hard time with that one because I'm a big introvert. I did take the test, and I'm 85% introvert. I'm very, very far on that scale. But at the same time, I have a hard time listening and asking questions. And so for me, it's not my experience that as an introvert, I have an easier time listening and asking questions. I just have an easier time zoning out, as I did. And so for me, it's less about being an introvert and more about being humble, as far as having the humility to be about the other person. And I think that's not necessarily inherent in introverts or extroverts. I think it can be both. Because as an introvert, I can easily be very much about myself and not care to listen or ask questions. That's what makes this a little more difficult and stressful for me. But it is a skill that you learn and you sharpen. Humility is a skill that you learn. And then going to the other side, you talk about extroverts being more naturally charismatic, right? Can charisma come naturally to an introvert?
I think it can. Introverts can still be charismatic. It'll just maybe drain their battery quicker.
Yeah. So you have what you call, or what I call, high-functioning introverts, to where you have, no one would guess that they're an introvert because they don't understand the definition of introvert. But they also don't see them go home and take a 2-hour nap afterwards. Yeah. That was something we had to navigate early in our marriage. Going back to the here, there path, you talk about how a leader helps the followers get to the there, kind of navigate the path to the there. Do the followers' ultimate there need to be the same as the leader's ultimate there?
I think they'll at least be similar for the leader to be leading them towards common vision.
Okay. Yeah. At least needs to be on the way to the leader's ultimate there, or else there's going to be a big detour. And we also talked about leading effectively relies heavily on a person's ability to cast a vision. for followers to cling to. So how would one, as an introvert or as an introvert, do that as far as casting a vision when most likely they're just thinking about the next time they can go home and take a nap?
I don't feel like it has to be like out in front. You can quietly influence towards the larger vision.
Okay. And then slightly lighter note. On a chessboard, I know almost that much about chess. On a chessboard, which piece would be an introvert and which piece would be an extrovert?
Probably king would be introvert.
Why is that?
You mainly stays on the back, stays back protected, and then probably bishops or rooks would be extroverts because they can travel across the whole board.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say the queen.
That would work too.
That would work too. Yeah. Very good. Thanks.
Okay, Drew, so I want to talk about, you said you have to kind of force yourself to step into leadership roles sometimes. So you talked about the coaching change, and you clearly jumped into leadership there. As an extreme introvert myself, not that it's a contest, but I'm a 90%. I do not deal well with change. Like, I rely on routine. So I'd like to hear, how do you feel about change? Like, is that difficult for you as well?
Yes. I don't like change.
So yet you've got this situation where it's uncomfortable. There's a leader needed. You hate change, but you jumped into it. So tell me about that. Like, how did you navigate that?
I saw a need that needed to be filled and just kind of decided that I was going to fill it.
Okay, and so from there, we're going to go back a little bit to the They're Here path. So, and the fact, actually at the beginning of that paragraph, you say, leadership is the ability to inspire and influence others toward a common vision through one's words and actions. Do you think it's easier as an introvert to lead with words or with actions?
Probably actions.
So do you think there's a way that we can lean into that strength as introverts? Because it sounds like that's what you did in the interim there with the new coach. You weren't getting up there and speaking a lot of words, but you led with action.
Right.
So how does that work? Like, how do you come up with a plan of action?
For cross country, it was that first practice, and we were getting ready to warm up, and nobody else was stepping into it. And I knew the warm up because it was the same that we'd been doing for years, and I helped the younger students learn how to do each drill and walk them through it.
So would you say introverts or extroverts are better with helping with the path part of the They're Here path?
Probably introverts. because they can help think through the ideas and plan how you're going to tackle it.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to lean into that. It makes leadership a lot easier for me anyway. I'm a systems person, and I can come up with systems and paths all day long. So lean into that. It's your friend. Want to talk a little bit about, you read the book Quiet. I have read that book too. And I told you the other day, one of the chapters in that book is about one of my psych stat professors at Texas A&M. And he was big into introversion and extroversion and did not mind a bit pushing us out of our comfort zone. So we're going to talk about comfort zones a little bit. How do you get the courage to step out of your comfort zone when you know you need to? What does that look like for you?
I think just trusting in God and then stepping out into it.
What's the biggest comfort zone for you where you really have to push that boundary? So in leadership, where do you have to push yourself the most?
For those times when I do have to get out and speak in front of people.
Agreed.
You know,
Yeah.
like this.
I totally get that. Do you think that we as introverts have to, if we're an introverted leader, do we have to lead large groups at a time? Or can we have just as much impact leading one person at a time or two people at a time?
I think you can have just as much of an impact in those smaller groups. It doesn't have to be in front of a large group. Well, it can sometimes, but it's just as effective in the smaller group too.
Yeah, and I recommend this book, The Powerful Purpose of Introverts. And in this, the author says, as introverts, we're always exerting influence, whether we realize it or not, because people are watching us. And visibility isn't a measure of our value. So we don't have to be up front doing our thing. That's not a necessary part of leadership. I would argue, and then I'm going to hand this back over to Mr. Snell, but I would argue that you are a very out front leader, even though you don't see yourself that way. And what I mean by that is you lead from the front because you're leading with action, not words. Mm-hmm. So keep doing that because you're good at it. I'm proud of you. You've done a great job with this. And good luck to you next year at Tech.
Thank you.
Almost there, Drew. So I want to kind of keep going on that path of courage and stepping out of comfort zones a little bit. And I want to ask, how does fear play into us not stepping into leadership?
I feel like if you let the fear take over, you maybe won't step out when even if you know you could have a positive impact on the situation.
Yeah. I was trying to think, maybe you can help me. Can you think of any Bible characters that God calls into positions of leadership that are initially in a state of fear or don't want to, or it's too big for me?
I think Moses and Aaron is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah, can you explain how that situation worked out and how that was resolved and how God's glory was shown through that?
God had called Moses to go free the Israelites, and Moses was afraid to go tell Pharaoh. So his little brother Aaron went and said his words to Pharaoh.
You should have just asked Josh to give your thesis. Right?
Yeah,
You could have at least asked, You could have said no.
I did.
You did. Come on, Aaron. Okay, yeah, Moses is fascinating. He has a fear of public speaking. I think I speak for all of us at this table that we have a fear of I don't really like this microphone right here, but I'm trying to act like I like it.
Yep.
Can you think of any others that had fear when God called them to positions of leadership?
Was it Jonah who didn't want to? I don't remember.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Jonah's definitely up there. Been reading that Bible story with Layla at night out of the Children's Storybook Bible. So he, flees and goes a different direction. I was also thinking of, a few others would be Joshua, right? And then another one is Gideon. So God calls Gideon, and he's threshing wheat in the winepress to stay out of the sight of the Midianites. But what God tells Joshua was fascinating to me. Joshua 1:9. Do you know that verse? Do you remember what it says? Okay.
No.
Do you know that verse, Josh? It says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And then he also repeats that several other times in that first chapter. But I just wanted to share that with you, that I think that that's a really valuable verse in my life. But maybe that can also be something, for you in your life, because I know you've shown that this year. But that's always given me comfort, be strong and courageous. And so I kind of want to give you that, as you go off next year to Texas Tech, that God has that promise for you as someone who's going to walk in obedience to the things he's called you to. I'm really proud of you. I think you've done a great job. And now I get to hand you the microphone to ask your question.
I have one question for each of you, or for the one question for all of you.
Okay.
Same words. What is the time you had to step out of your comfort zone and it left a positive outcome on your life? And also, are your kids introverts or extroverts?
I'll answer that first. It would be standing at that podium right there a number of years ago as a senior in high school and thinking it was the scariest thing that I'd ever had to do. I think the way that God used that afterwards is he's given me that, memory to rely on whenever I have to speak in public or do something that's scary. It's no big deal. I can stand up in front of any group of people and do that. But for years, I dreaded that podium as a student here at MCA because I knew that lots of people had gone up there and done really well, and I would have to go up there someday and do that too. So now you're finished with that part, and hopefully, God uses that in the same way in your life, that you've overcome that fear and walked in obedience. And I think Layla is definitely an extrovert. She has to give hugs to all her friends before she leaves the church and all those things. And Luke, we'll find out. I'm not sure yet. But I definitely, we have our hands full with an extrovert, and we'll have to figure out how to do that. So.
So for me, two things come to mind. The first time, I guess, came in my speech class in high school where my teacher told me, you will fail if you don't give a speech. So I finally did give a speech, and it was terrible. But I didn't fail. And the other time that comes to mind was the one and only time I've ever preached a sermon. Also felt terrible, but I think God redeemed it, that's what he does. And I definitely saw and felt growth through it. I've slowly become more and more comfortable speaking in front of people because of those instances of being forced. Well, I wasn't forced to preach, but strongly encouraged. So yeah, those two are the ones that come to my mind. Cooper is definitely an extrovert. His most common question at home is, "Are friends coming over? Are friends coming? Will you see friends today?" Julia, I don't know if she's a little young to really figure it out, but I just know she never stops making noise. So I think I'm surrounded by extroverts at home. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
The thing that comes to mind for me is spring of 2007, my first year at MCA. I had been to a grand total of 1 thesis, and I had to get up here with my senior assistant and do this. That was a little bit stressful. At our house, everybody is introverted except now my son-in-law is very extroverted and my granddaughter is very extroverted. So we're all kind of getting broken in at this point.
All right. Once again, great job. Proud of you. And I'll close this in prayer. Father God, I thank you so much for the courage that Drew has shown getting up here and doing a good job of speaking and sharing his heart, sharing his experience with his peers and his family and friends. Father, I thank you for the group that you have gathered around him that love and support him and encourage him, Father. And I pray that as he moves forward at Tech and beyond, that you continue to surround him with people that not only encourage him but push him and sometimes force him into situations that will stretch him and grow him. If nothing else, in dependence on you. Father, I once again thank you for his heart and his effort. And thank you for being a redeemer. Pray all this in your name. Amen.